Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy folks, and welcome back to another exciting Nerdstalgic podcast episode. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you for joining me. As always, hope you're well, as always also. I've got some great, fantastic news today before we begin. The amazing people at World of Books, you probably heard about me talking about them before in prior episodes, but they have decided to sponsor the show. What that means is that they've given me a fantastic coupon, a fantastic deal for you guys. If you go onto their store and you go to checkout and you decide that you've got yourself a good collection of books from them, you can put in the coupon nerdy10. That's all high case nerdy10 at checkout, and that'll give you a 10% discount, which is fantastic. 10% discount on them. Now, I've just realized I haven't explained to you what World of Books do. World of Books is a company based here in the UK, but they're also out in Germany, France, and America, from what I can remember. And what they do is that they rescue books. So they recycle books. They take books that would go to landfill, books that are collected on somebody's shelf at home, or books that are, in a charity shop. They collect them in their big warehouse and then allow you to go onto eBay, Amazon, or directly through them yourself, through the www.worldofbooks.co.uk, or I think it's actually www.wob. I think they've changed it. Either way, just go into Google, type in World of Books, and if you go to them directly, you can use the coupon there. So that's nerdy10 to get 10% off on any books that take your fancy on there. So thank you to the folks at World of Books for sponsoring not just this episode, but also the show entirely. I love them to bits. I am a huge fan of them. I've bought from them many, many times, so I can recommend them highly. And so thank you to them, and let's get on into it. So today's episode is going to be one that, well, let me take you back. When it comes to doing podcasting or even any sort of content generation, one of the hardest parts about it is actually thinking up of a topic. For me, it is anyway. I always struggle, but yeah, that was a fantastic topic I did this week. What am I going to do next week? And I'm like, So I've got loads of notes of different types of topics that I want to talk about, some big, some small. But I like to do variations. I like to do a different thing each week. So if one week I'm doing gaming, next week I maybe do movies or do a book review or something like that. I like to keep it different. I don't want to be pinned down to doing one type of thing. So last week I did Kung Fu Panda. Hopefully you folks liked it. You folks enjoyed it. So this week I thought I'd do something different. And I was going through my notes. Couldn't really find anything that I thought that I could really get together, like not just in short time, but also get done and get good at a good quality that you guys would enjoy, because I feel like if I was to do any of them on my list, they're all fantastic topics, but I'd need like a week or two to really research them. So as I was flicking through my notes and going through online, I came across a YouTube video of a animated studio's final animation. And it happened to be Blue Sky Studio. They're known for doing the Ice Age and Rio, Spies in Disguise, Ferdinand, but mostly known for doing Ice Age. And it was their last ever animated short. And it was a simple short of Little Scrat, which is a little sort of mouse mouse thing with loads of really long sort of saber-toothed tiger sort of teeth, from the Ice Age franchise. It really became sort of the poster child for Blue Sky animation. And basically this little animation goes on for about 4 or 5 minutes of him going around finding his acorn, eating his acorn, then leaving. And it was just like a farewell, being like, this is our last ever animation. Scrat finally got what he was looking for, and that's it. And it made me sit there and think of like, nobody talks about this studio, how good this studio was, how much this studio, especially for me being somebody who's nostalgic, and it's kind of what we do here, that I figured nobody really talks about this studio. They always talk about DreamWorks or Pixar or Sony Animation or even Disney, but they never seem to talk about the little guys. And I looked at their sort of catalogue of all the stuff they've done, and they've mostly just done Ice Age, but they've done some other great crackers as well. So I figured, you know what, no one's talking about it. They've recently, shut down shop. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to talk about them. So what I decided to do is that going on from that, looking at they've only got a small catalogue as it is, I figured, you know what, I'm going to do a bi-weekly thing every other week. I'm going to watch one of their movies, sit down and review it, talk about it, and kind of shine a bit more light on them. Also there's a few films in there that I haven't seen. I haven't seen Ferdinand. I haven't seen Spies in Disguise. I haven't seen Rio 1 or 2. I've been told Rio 1's really, really good. It's a bit of a sad story that comes with the real life blue macaques that are in the Rio movie. They're extinct now, but when the movie came out, they weren't extinct. So, there's a little bit more extra to it. But I thought, you know what, it'd be an interesting topic. I love nostalgia. A lot of the movies that they did, I grew up on, and I think it'd be a nice farewell just to say goodbye. So that's the topic today. We're going to talk about the history of Blue Sky Studio, and then we're going to talk about their first ever short film that they did before they made Ice Age, which I will make sure what you can find it on YouTube, but we'll get to that in a minute. So that's my introduction. So on to the history of the studio. So the studio opened their doors on February the 22nd, 1987, and they closed their doors on April the 10th, 2021. So it wasn't that long ago that they closed their doors. Their final animation, as I said, was Scrat's Happy End. I don't know if that was actually the name. Whenever I googled it, it would always be Scrat's Happy Ending, Happy Farewell sort of thing. So I just went with Scrat's Happy Ending. But either way, that was their last ever one they did. And this animation, as I said, is why I'm talking about it. So that's sort of where we are now in terms of them themselves. They were an American computer animation studio based in Greenwich, Connecticut. Like as I said, it was founded in 18. Slow down, Luke. They didn't have computers in the 18th century. Slow down. So, yeah, breathe. Okay. Founded in 1987 by Chris Wedge, Michael Farrow, Carl Ludwig, Alison Brown, David Brown, and Eugene Chukowski, after their employer, Magi, one of the visual effects studios behind the Tron movie, shut down. Using its in-house rendering software, the studio created visual effects for commercials and films before dictating itself to animated film production. Its first feature film, being The Ice Age, was released in 2002 by 20th Century Fox. It produced 13 feature films, the final film being Spies in Disguise. That was their final full feature, the one that comes out in cinema. Released in December 25th, 2019. I haven't seen it. I saw the beginning of it, but when I get around to that movie, we'll talk about that more often. So that was the last movie they did. Blue Sky Studios was a subsidiary of 20th Century Animation until it's acquired by Disney as part of their acquisition of the 21st Century Fox assets in 2019. In February 2021, Disney announced that Blue Sky would be shut down in April 2021, citing the economic impact of COVID-19 lockdowns on its business operations. The studio ceased all operation on April the 10th, 2021. Ice Age and Rio were the studio's most commercially successful franchises, while Robots 2005, Horton Hears a Who 2008, The Peanuts Movie 2015, and Spies in Disguise were among its most critically praised films. Scrat, a character from the Ice Age, was the studio's mascot. Now I looked more into why they closed down, and the best sort of the most brief and most honest sort of layman's terms I could give is the fact of they didn't want to run more than one studio. So I looked at this one sort of article. This was from Collider. They said Blue Sky Studios was one of the assets acquired by Disney in 2019 when the House of Mouse brought a big chunk of 20th Century Fox through a multi-billion-dollar deal. In February 2021, Disney announced that it would be shutting down the animation studio, citing the economic impact of the pandemic. See, for me, when I read that, it's just the fact of, well, we have a lot of animated studios as it is. We don't need another one, so we'll just dissolve their assets, and then what we'll probably do, I have no sort of word of this actually happening, but what I would assume it being a big company, and what most companies do. We spoke about it with Activision and Blizzard before, where and EA, where they dissolve sort of studios, and then they take sort of creatives from them studios and stick them elsewhere. What I would assume happened is, well, we've got enough studios as it is. We'll dissolve this one studio, we'll get rid of it, and then we'll just put whoever's left on other projects in other studios working at Pixar, Disney, and all the other studios that they own. And if that's true, which probably chance of it likely it being true, it's a shame. It really is. Like I said, we're going to look into it more. But for my nostalgia part of it, Blue Sky Studios, growing up and watching Ice Age sort of was like, because growing up, I always say that I'm very lucky for when I grew up, because I always feel like I managed to see a lot of what are now known as classic animation. When I grew up, it was just the next sort of movie. It wasn't a big thing, and so I feel like I'm very lucky to have grown up when I had, for the amazing films that I got to see, whether it be Shrek, whether it be Chicken Run, whether it be Toy Story, whether it be what else? I was gonna say Madagascar, but Madagascar's quite big. I'm trying to think of another studio that other than Pixar and DreamWorks. Like I said, Ice Age, robots, and all that. So I was quite lucky to grow up, and like I said, these are like the cornerstone. You're growing up with the Shrek, growing up with Toy Story, and growing up with this studio, Blue Sky Studio, Ice Age. It was the cornerstone of my being. I remember growing up, as I've grown up, I would be having like beans on toast or eating dinner, having Chinese food, and my dad would be like, "Oh, Ice Age is on. Let's watch Ice Age," and we'll watch Ice Age, and we'll laugh at Sid, and we'll laugh at Diego, and Manny. It just be heartwarming, And so to hear that the studio's no longer around, it's quite sad. But the movies that they made, I've watched majority of all of them. There's only a few that I haven't seen. Ice Age, March the 15th, 2002. You've got Robots, March the 11th, 2005. They've got a thing for March. I'm just looking at majority of their movies come out in March. Then you got Ice Age, The Meltdown. Then Dr. Seuss, Horton Hears a Who. Ice Age, Dawn of Dinosaurs. And you got Rio. Ice Age, Continental Drift. Epic. Epic was good. I think Epic was underrated, but it was a very good sort of film. Rio 2, the Peanuts movie, Ice Age Collision Course, and you got Ferdinand, and you got Spies in Disguise. Actually, I'm going to look into how much money Ice Age made. I'm sure it's like $1 billion sort of film. Let's have a look. How much money did... So, overall, it was made on a budget of $59 million, and in the box office it made 383.2 million. I don't know if that's worldwide or if that's domestic, but that's pretty... Hold on, box office, blah, blah, blah. So it has a $46.3 million opening on the weekend. Large numbers not usually seen until the summer season. Blah, blah, blah. It broke Lala's record for a March opening. That's not bad. And it was surpassed in 2006 by its sequel, Ice Age The Meltdown. But yeah, that's me flicking through Wikipedia. Never go to Wikipedia for information, by the way. It's okay for doing stuff like this, but if you're doing a dissertation or paper, never use Wikipedia. Always go extra resources. But I just wanted to give like a brief history of the studio, and so just kind of jog people's memory, because Blue Sky Studios, for a lot of people that you talk to, if you say that name, a lot of people, unless they're into animation, they're not going to know, who they are. I've said to a lot of people, "Oh, Ice Age. Who made Ice Age?" And DreamWorks. People always seem to go to the big three, Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks. And for a long time, like, for example, Robots. Robots is one of my favorite movies that they've done. And for a long time, I believed that Robots was a DreamWorks film, and it wasn't until I spoke to a friend who was like, "Oh no, that was Blue Sky." I was like, "No, it wasn't." I'm like, "No, it was." So I get mistakes. I make mistakes as well. It happens. But like I said, I just wanted to give a brief sort of explanation of the studio, who they were, what they did, and why they're so important. Like I said, their movies are just... I say you should use it in the past tense. Their movies were great. They had a lot of potential. Granted, I remember hearing about Spies in Disguise didn't do so well, But that's no reason to shut a studio down. You know, the movie still made a lot of money back. It had Tom Holland in it, and I think Will Smith was in it as well, and had a kooky sort of premise behind the whole idea. We got like Will Smith was a super spy, and he got turned into a pigeon, and then you have Tom Holland's character is like a guy who, I think if I remember correctly, he creates gadgets. I don't remember much about it. I'm basically going off what I remember from the trailer. But yeah, so I'll get around to that movie when I get to it. But what I thought I'd do, figuring that, you know, even though the studio's been around for a long time, if I give you the brief history, this ain't going to be a very long sort of episode. I don't really want to waste anybody's time. So what I thought I'd do is that I would look out. Well, I was actually going to watch Ice Age until I found out that they had made a short movie before Ice Age, which was called Bunny. I googled online. I found that I could watch it. It was only about 7 minutes long on YouTube, so I thought I'd sit and watch it and give my sort of thoughts and feelings on their first ever movie. And then in the next episode, whenever I get round to doing it, we'll be talking about Ice Age and go from there. So that's my plan: go from movie to movie to movie, highlighting some of their work, highlighting what I like about them, maybe what I don't like about them. Who knows? Rewatching them now as an adult, most likely I will like them, because I'm going to say now I'll probably come off as quite biased. But that being said, I just feel like I just want to reiterate before I move on. It is a studio that means a lot to me. It's a studio that means a lot to people my age growing up. They have a cornerstone in our sort of consciousness growing up. These are the movies that we sort of attached ourselves to. And I just feel like more people should be talking about them. So hopefully this is the first step to get a lot of people sort of thinking about this studio, going back, watching their movies, and just appreciating them for what they were at the time. So that's the history, and that's my thoughts and feelings on Blue Sky Studio. I always get mixed up why did these studios have to have really sort of catchy, sort of tongue-tied sort of names? I always seem to get tongue-tied on these long names like Luxo Flux, and I get it. You got to be unique, you got to stand out, but at the same time, it's like it really makes me struggle. But that's Blue Sky Studios animated place, person, them, history. Boom. I'm not going to change that. I'm going to keep that in the edit. So here's going to be my short review of their first ever award-winning movie, Bunny. All right, guys, let's get into it, shall we? So, Bunny, it was released in 1998 and received the Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film. Bunny's success gave Blue Sky Studios the opportunity to produce feature-length films, which they went on to do Ice Age. So, this movie, only a short film, it's about 7.5 minutes long, so it's not a very sort of taxing film. You can, like I said, you can watch it for free on YouTube, which I do recommend you go see it, because it's a lovely sort of short silent film. The film is quite sad, but beautiful. It's about grief and about loss. A silent film akin to the beginning of Up. So I'm just going through my notes at the moment. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of Up. If you remember at the beginning of Up, Pixar did a fantastic job at telling a story without actually having any words. They did it with Wall-E. Wall-E was a fantastic example of how you could make a movie just using sound. Using visuals and sound, you can tell a story without actually having any dialogue. And that's what I love about the beginning of Up, because they tell a story from beginning to end, from two lovers meeting for the first time, getting married, living their life together, and then one passing away in just a short amount of time. It breaks your heart, and it breaks my heart every time I watch it. And that's the kind of feeling that I was getting here with Bunny. Like I said, it's a sad film about loss, about grief. The only difference is that in this movie, when you have Up, where it follows the story of Carl and Ellie, and then Ellie eventually passing away, then the movie begins. In this, the characters already lost their partner, and the character is a bunny rabbit, an old bunny rabbit, and the basic premise of it, he's trying to be on his own, silent in a silent house, like it's like a silent movie, just using sound effects and music to tell a story, and he's trying to bake a cake, and as he's baking, a moth comes in, attracting to the light, and keeps hitting the light, obviously getting on his nerves. So then he moves, gets the moth, makes the moth leave the house, and then he goes back to do his cooking again. Moth finds his way back in. He's getting angry now. Tries to get the moth to go away. Moth won't go away, and he ends up basically swatting the moth. It lands in, I think it's like a pie or a souffle that he's trying to make, and he basically just goes, "Oh, screw it," and just goes crazy. Batters, like not batters, but in a way kind of batters. Gets like mixes the moth in with like his batter and his eggs and all that. Pours it into a dish and puts it in the oven and basically kills it. Kills this moth. And that's sort of the basic sort of premise. And if on the upside of it, it made me giggle because I thought, oh god, this is a bit extreme. But as you watch it, and you start paying attention, they use the moth as a way of talking about reincarnation, about a death. It tells the story that he's on his own, he's lost his partner, and that they use the moth as the idea of like an angel sort of thing, or reincarnation even, and that the moth kept trying to come back in the house every time the man, or the bunny, the male bunny, tried to get rid of the moth, like open the door, turn the lights off, like in darkness, in light, no matter where this bunny goes. The moth keeps trying to get into the house. The moth never leaves, and the idea of it's attracted to the light, but it's also attracted to him. Like every time where he goes, the moth goes. And it's that idea of, his wife reincarnated as the moth, that she is always around him, you know. Um, and it's not really clear. It's not really clear to the last sort of 2 minutes of the movie, where after he's basically got the moth and he's attacked it and just sort of mix it up into I'm going to call it a pie, and stuck this pie in the oven, that he sits down, he falls asleep in a chair, and then he sort of wakes up from a dream, and as he's waking up, he sees the moth again, but the the oven sort of is glowing, and the oven door opens up, and it's like this big blue light, and it's like a tunnel, and the moth's flying around him, and his moth's kind of like nudging him, like, come on, come into the oven. Which I was kind of like, in my mind, I'm thinking the fact of, don't crawl into ovens, and I thought it was going to be like, because this is before I figured out that the whole message behind the short film. I assumed it would be the fact of a grumpy old man attacked a moth. The moth gets his own back by tricking the old man into following him into the oven, and then the moth basically closing the oven behind him, turning the oven on, and cooking the rabbit. That's what was in my mind. That's what I was expecting. That's what I was gearing up for. Because as the guy goes in to follows the light starts to like dim as the door starts to close, and you watch the camera pans onto the oven door as the oven door closes. And I'm thinking, here we go. The moth's going to come out of nowhere. He didn't die inside the pie, and he's just going to turn the oven on, and that's it. The old man's going to die. That was, again, it sounds quite sadistic, but that was just the thought. Okay, that's what they're going for here. But no, it's kind of like the best way to explain it. If you watch Doctor Who and you see the TARDIS go through the time vortex, it's kind of like that. It's a lot of blues, a lot of golds, and he's flying towards. You could sort of interpret it being heaven or the afterlife or reincarnation. But as he's flying along and he's got this moth next to him, who I assume, and I am almost sure that moth is a reincarnation of his wife. As he's flying with her towards the end, loads of other moths start coming out of nowhere and start flying around. And it's the idea of, are they trying to say that when you die, that you come back as a moth, and that's a way to stay around people? Is that a way to explain the fact of reincarnation, or you're never alone, no matter where you go, that they'll always be around you, they'll always be attracted to you, like a moth is attracted to a flame or attracted to a light, that you'll always attract their presence. I'm not sure, like I said, it's only like a 7-minute short silent film, so again, it's one of them sort of movies that you make up your own mind, and whatever your mind comes up with is the narrative. So that's my thought behind it. Is he lost his wife, he's on his own, he's just cooking. The moth comes in, the Moth being the reincarnation of his wife, always flying around him, always flying around the picture of them too, because the Moth actually flies into. There's like a wedding picture of the bunny and his wife, and who's also a rabbit, by the way. Just in case anybody was thinking that, it's a bit weird. But the Moth kept flying into it, knocking it, making the frame sort of move, and obviously that kind of pissed him off to be like, okay, that's it, Moth, you've got to go. You're gonna like break my photo. But like this is all just like a 7-minute movie. It's not a long film. But that's just how I took out of it. The fact of the Moth is always around, his wife's all around, and yeah, he died. I would guess in my mind when he fell asleep in that chair, he died in that chair, and that he um was just sort of his spirit when he woke up. His spirit was the thing that went into the oven and followed on to the afterlife, and maybe even reincarnating into another sort of Moth. Um, it's a very beautiful but sad story when you really sit and think about it. Like I said, it deals with grief and it deals with loss, but in such a small amount of time, it tells this great story without just using music, without just using visuals. There's no, um, there's no sort of what's the word I'm looking for? There's no vocabulary. There's no script at all. There's no dialogue. It is purely just heartwarming visuals. And I could really, looking at their animation style, obviously it improved for Ice Age, but looking at where they began and where they got to, you can really tell they had an eye for storytelling. That they really wanted to be able to tell a story um, that made you feel, but also told you nothing, if that makes sense. Like, it's one of the, again, it's very subjective. It's one of those where, like, without telling you anything, it's up to you, the watcher, to make up your mind what happens. Because you could just look at it the fact of, old man gets pissed off at a Moth, kills Moth, bakes it in a pie, and then falls asleep, and then at the end the Moth sort of lures him into the oven, and that him thinking he's going to the afterlife, he's actually, you know he's dead, he's getting cooked alive. Or it could be, the story of, like I said, about loss and reincarnation, about, the spirit is all around you and you're never alone. You never lose the ones that you love as long as you hold them in your heart. So it's very subjective, so it tells you nothing and it leaves it all up to you, and I can understand why it won an award, and I'm glad it did, because it lent to the fact of, well, this is what they can do, we're going to give them funding, because let's see what they can do in a feature film. And then that led to Ice Age and all the other sort of amazing films that came then. So it's only a short film, but I wanted to highlight it, and it'd be the first movie that I talk about. Hopefully, when I get around to talking about Ice Age and robots and Ferdinand and Epic and all the other sort of Horton Hears a Who, I loved Horton Hears a Who. The Peanuts movie, in my opinion, is absolutely fantastic and is underrated. But hopefully, when I get around to talking about them, it'll be a lot longer, in-depth sort of reviews. This is only, like I said, only a short movie, short silent film, 7 minutes long. But I thought, if it's their beginning, it's going to be my beginning, and we're going to sort of, as we go, and we're going to see the evolution of the studio, of how they got better. But definitely, looking at what they did here with Bunny, I can understand why they won an award. I can understand why Fox took a chance on them. Was like, you know what? If they could do this, let's see what they can do with a bigger budget, in a longer run time. Um, and like I said, I say this came out in 90. This came out in 98. Ice Age 2 didn't come out until 2002. So they took a good enough time to sort of really narrow down the story, and the software, and understanding how it works, making a full-length movie. Obviously, I'll get round to it when I fully talk about Ice Age, but the point is I'm trying to make is that, looking at where they started, I can definitely see how and why they ended up where they were, and how their animation style got. I still, to this day, don't feel like they deserve to have been shut down. You can say whatever you want about the economic structure of it, but I don't believe you. Basically, Disney owns some of the biggest animated studios in the world. Um, they don't need another one, so let's just dissolve this one, take their sort of workers, take their sort of, because we own it anyway, take all the software, all the stuff that they're working on, and let's just use it for our own or other studios. Even though they'd still be making money, let's just liquidate it. So I don't agree with that, but that's just how business works. At the end of the day, it's called business, not friend. Friend business. It's called business, not friendship business. I don't know. One of these days, I need to get that quote. I need to write it down, because whenever I use it, I always use it wrong. And then whenever I hear it, I'm like, that's how I say it. And so that's how I'm going to say it next time. The next time comes along and I don't say it properly. So next time I'm going to write that quote down. But because it is a good quote, I just butcher it every time I use it. And I should stop using it, but I always seem to come round to the time of where I always seem to use it, even though I know I shouldn't. Anyway, so that's been my review of Bunny, and also talking about the brief history, because it was only a brief history. Like, they were around for a good few years, but their history in terms of how we know them was only short, really. Hopefully, like I said, when we get around to talk about all the other sort of episodes and all their other sort of films, will be a lot longer. But so this is that, and yeah. So let's end it, shall we? Because I feel like I'm rambling. All right, guys, let's get into it, shall we? And that is all she wrote. The fat lady stopped singing, and my ship is now in port. We have reached the end, as they say. One thing I do want to sort of reiterate is the fact of, if you are interested in watching Bunny, the short movie, it's on YouTube. Just type in Blue Sky Studio Bunny short film, and you can find it on there. Like I said, it's only like 7 minutes long. Watch it, give it a go, and see how you feel about it. See if you feel the same as me. Just let me know what you think. Talking about let me know what you think. Obviously, let me know what you, not just of the short movie, but also let me know what you think of this episode. And you can do that really fantastically by following. See how well I transition? I do it quite well, don't I? But you can let me know your thoughts and feelings by follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod. You can also find this podcast on Spotify, on Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music Podcasts. You could also, half the press, because I'm currently working on it, but it's currently out. You can also find this podcast on YouTube. As always, just type in the Nerdstalgic podcast on YouTube, look for my flaming face, and then you'll find old back catalogue episodes on there that you can check out. I try to upload at least 3 episodes a week. So if you haven't checked it out now, by all means, please go on there, subscribe, and like and share and all that jazz. I'd be really much appreciated. And if you're already on there, hopefully by the time this episode comes out, there should be a lot more episodes uploaded. Fingers crossed. If you listen to this in the future, then my whole catalogue will be on there. So it's all hunky-dory. So there's that. Also, if you listen to this on Spotify, if you haven't already, please, if you go on to my bio, well, it's not my bio, on my page, under my page, there'll be some stars. Just click on the stars, and it'll be from 1 to 5 stars. Give me a rating from 5 stars being the best thing you ever heard in your life, to 1 star being Vogon's reciting poetry. Absolute trash, absolutely terrible. So 1 being bad, 5 being good. Whatever you feel like is fair, give me a rating. It also helps me very, very much with Spotify, because the higher my rating, the more that people get to see the show, which means more followers and more stuff that I can do here, and just more fun we can have in the future. So don't forget to rate. Don't forget to follow the podcast on wherever you can find podcasts. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod. Again, YouTube, the Nerdstalgic podcast, my flaming face, and that should be it. Oh, just one thing I want to reiterate before I go. Thank you again to World of Books for sponsoring this episode, for sponsoring the show. Again, that coupon is nerdy10. That is NERDY, all high case. 10 at the end. Put that at the end on the World of Books website. And when you get to your basket, there'll be little things that says enter coupon. Enter your coupon there, and you'll save yourself 10% off your next order, which is a fantastic deal if you ask me. So I have been Luke. of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm still trying to figure out how to end these episodes. Each time I do one, every episode is a different ending. But I'm going to go with the really violent one and be like, this is Luke signing off. I don't know why. It's the first thing that comes into mind. And I'll see you in the next one. All right then. Cheerio. Bye bye, guys.